I know Loretta mentioned the hurricanes and that kind of stuff. I've had people ask me, are we going to do anything to help? Here's the plan. There's a couple of organizations that are doing incredible things to really help out in Houston, and they're making some plans to help out in Florida. Florida's getting just absolutely bombarded right now. But so what we do is we partner with them. So there's an organization called Samaritan's Purse. And that's headed up by Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son, and they're doing great stuff. And also, you can do some help through KW radio station. Okay, now the reason we're going through those, every single cent that you put in, every little bit of help that you give, 100% of that goes. And it's not that way with every organization. So rather than us doing a really crummy job of trying to help and doing something ourselves, we thought we would partner with organizations that are making the most difference. What do you think? That's good? All right? So if you want to help with that, just do that, right? Now, here's what's weird. You know, there's all these hurricanes and earthquakes and fires, and people go, oh, does this mean it's the end? Yes. It's the last days. Well, it's been the last days since Jesus ascended back into heaven. So if you're waiting for catastrophic events to get your act together, this might be a good time. Okay, so anyway, but we don't want to scare you with that. But here's the deal: that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. But I think as a believer, helping out and making a difference, that's what makes us different. Okay, so you can be a part of that. All right. So now we're talking about this series, and we're calling it "The Enemies Within." And we're using this verse in Mark chapter 7, where it says that it's out of our hearts is where the problems come from. See, listen, your problem is not all those guys. Your problem is this guy. Not me per se, but I mean, you know, that didn't even come out right at all. But see, the problem is the person in the mirror, not the person in the living room. It's not your neighbor, it's not your coworkers, it's not those kids. The problem is it's the enemy within, all right? And so here's what I want you to get. So when we're talking about life, the well that you drink from determines the life that you live. The well that you drink from determines the life that you live. Now, if I think about this just a little bit, anybody ever had, if you ever unknowingly shared your soda with a small child? Anybody ever done that? Comes back with 17 grams of fiber, right? Now you pick it up, you go, whoa, yeah, that's yours now, right? You know, especially when they use the bottle, they do this, you know. And then whatever's left of the cookie goes back in. You get it, right? And so here's what I'm saying, though, is that whatever we put inside the well we drink from will largely determine the life that we live. So the enemy is within. It's the stuff that gets inside of us. Now, here's what I'm saying. Sometimes things can get inside of us that mess us up on the outside, right? Anybody ever had anything get to you? Anybody ever said anything that's just like just wind your clock, you know, it's like, and so here's what I'm saying. See, sometimes the well we drink from, it gets inside of us and causes problems on the outside. Now, oftentimes what we do is we try to blame the people around us. Well, if they wouldn't have made me mad, if it's not them, it's going to be somebody, because the enemy is on the inside. So a few years ago, I had a buddy of mine, and he took a trip to the mountains, and when he come back from the mountains, he was really, really sick. I mean, really sick. We were trying to work. He didn't spend a whole lot of time working because he was doing other stuff. Yeah, other stuff. And so, but the funny thing was, he was one of those hyper faith guys. You guys know what I mean by the hyper faith? So he wasn't actually sick. It was just a lying symptom from the devil. So he was sick for a really long time. And I would kind of mock him every once in a while and say, hey, how's your healing doing? You know, just kind of mess with him. But so after a while, he finally relented. It's like, you know, my faith isn't doing what I thought it would. I'm just really feeling bad. So he finally went to the doctor. So he went to the doctor. The doctor ran a few tests, talked to him, asked him questions. And the doctor finally told him, look, when you went to the mountains, you drank water from a stream. When you drank water from the stream, a parasite got in you. And as long as the parasite is in you, you're going to be sick. So he asked the doctor, how long would this last? He goes, I don't know. How long will you last? Because here's what the doctor was saying. if we don't do something to kill what got inside of you, eventually it will kill the man outside of you. So here's what's important. When we talk about the enemies within, this is what makes this such a big deal. When these enemies get on the inside of us and they're allowed to stay, they will consume life until there's nothing left of you, and you become a person that you don't even recognize. Right? So that's what makes this entire series so important. So in Mark chapter 7, verse 21, let me just read this to you. Mark chapter 7, verse 21, we've heard this a lot. Now remember, the parasite that got inside of him, a parasite is something that lives at the expense of somebody else. So those enemies that live in you, it lives at your own expense. So Mark chapter 7, verse 21 says, "For from within, out of men's hearts, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery," and I'm only going to read one word of verse 22, greed. Everybody say greed. Now, see, when I looked at this, I thought, I'm off the hook. I'm not greedy. How can I be greedy? I'm poor, right? You got to have stuff to be greedy, I would think, right? So we're talking about greed, like, okay, cool. I'm cool today. This is good. You're going to be talking about all y'all people, right? So we're talking about this greed. Now when we've talked about the four enemies, we talked about guilt, where we feel like we owe somebody, we're trying to make up. We talked about anger, where you're just kind of messing up the world around you. But when we're talking about greed, I've never actually had somebody come to me and say, "Pastor Dave, I just really struggle with greed." Nobody's ever said that, ever. Because nobody now when they say that, hey, I have an anger problem, I've heard people talk to me about that. They say I feel guilty about the way but never greed. And here's the deal, because greed is something that hides behind a mask of good virtues. All right, so now, here's what I thought about. When we're talking about greed, sometimes, see, greed is just basically wanting control. That's what it is. There are people that try to control relationships because they withhold affection, or they withhold caring, or they manipulate. That's still greed. So here's what I'm saying for you and I today. You might not think that you struggle with greed, but if you use your leverage that is at your disposal, if you use that to manipulate your relationship, if you use it to kind of get your way, greed is an issue with you. Have I got your attention yet? In fact, some of you guys sitting in this room today, you're struggling with a lot of issues, and you don't even recognize it, but the enemy of greed has got inside of you because you're trying to control the world around you, and it's exasperating because people don't do what you want, right? My friend, that's greed, right? So here's the deal. Now, because it's kind of greed is kind of a stealth thing. It kind of goes underground. So we use reasoning like, I'm just careful. You can't trust everybody, or I'm just kind of guard my heart, or I'm just a planner. I'm a thinker. I'm just a good steward. Now those are all great virtues. Of course you want to be a planner. You want to be a good steward. Of course you want to be careful, and that's true. You can't really trust everybody. But the problem is, sometimes the virtues that we hide behind don't ask us the right questions. So when it comes to your stuff, when it comes to your time, when it comes to your heart, the right question is, who owns it? Who owns it? Because as long as it belongs to me, I get to say so. I get control over what is. True? But if it doesn't belong to me, let me try something. I was going to ask Earl for money. He don't have any. You got any money, Earl? Hey, Don, you got money? You got money? I'm not going to wait all day. Okay, Christy, do you have any money? Okay, there's Earl. Let me pick one. Dang. Okay, you can sit down. Okay, now watch this. How many guys know this is Earl's money? Okay, how many guys know this is Don's money? All right. Now watch this. Now, so this belongs to, we'll say them, right? I'm holding it, right? Now here's how this works. It's a matter of ownership. Now here's what I think. Earl, I think I need the Starbucks. Okay? Now I want a good Starbucks. Okay. And as a matter of fact, I think my wife and I, we need to have a good lunch. right? You know, Christy, I know you've been trying real hard, so we're going to help you out too, okay? Now, Earl's like, hey, wait a second. Or Don's like, hey, wait a second. Now, watch this. Because they're the owner, I don't get a say-so over where it goes, right? Okay, I'm going to give it back to you, okay? Here's what I want you to know, okay, Earl? You won't hear this, but Earl, you could do whatever you want. It's not true. But see, here's what I'm saying. So now, when it comes to our resources, we have three revenue streams of resources. We have our stuff or our wealth, we have our time, and we have our experiences. Our stuff or our wealth are our belongings, our house, our car, our paycheck, all that kind of stuff. We have that as a resource, okay? We have our time. You are in control of your time, mostly. And if you have small kids, then you're not in control of anything, okay? So, and you are also in control of your experiences, your talents, your knowledge, your wisdom. You're in control of those things. And so what it is we leverage those things in we leverage those things in life. And what happens is we think it belongs to us. And when we think it belongs to us, we determine how it goes. That's where we manipulate each other. And that's how relationships end up going south, right? So we're talking about these three revenues. Now here's the deal. God thinks things are completely different because God thinks that the greed is not an economic issue. God thinks it's a heart issue. It's a heart thing, okay? Here's God's viewpoint of things. So our stuff is really not our worth, it's just our work. Here's how God sees your marriage. Here's how God sees your family. Here's how God sees your stuff. This is how God sees your calendar. This is how God sees you. In the book of Psalms chapter 24 and verse 1, he said, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And oftentimes what happens is we look at, well, that's mine. I want my way. I like to do things the way I want it. So we have these personal pronouns that we identify all this stuff. God says, listen, it's not yours. It's mine. You are merely a manager. I'm the owner. And God has this great plan of how we're supposed to live our lives. But sometimes when we think where we get our feelings hurt, whatever, we just do things in a different way. So it's really an ownership thing. Now what this gets us down to, in Luke chapter 18, this rich young ruler comes to Jesus. And he's really trying to justify his life. He's actually trying to convince Jesus that he's doing good. You ever have somebody come to you and they try to convince you that they're doing good? Hey, I've done this and this and this. Doing good, huh? All right? He's trying to convince Jesus he's doing good. So they have this conversation, and Jesus kind of gives him this list of commandments, and I've done all these kind of things. So they have this great conversation. Now, this guy had worked awful hard to get where he was. Let's kind of make this real. You've worked awful hard to get where you are. Some of you worked awful hard in recovery. Some of you worked awful hard in relationships. Some of you worked awful hard just to get yourself out of debt or even just to get a job. So he's feeling pretty good about himself. You know what? I've done good. How many guys can look back and say, you know what? I think I'm doing okay. So he approaches Jesus. Hey, Jesus, I think I'm doing pretty good. What do you think? But here's the deal. Because of the question that he asked Jesus tells me what he thinks that he's going to be able to get out of the life that he's living. Because here's what he asked Jesus. What do I have to do? Or is there anything else I need to inherit eternal life? Now, because he asked that question, what I get out of this is I look and say, you know what? Obviously, what he thought was going to bring him satisfaction, what he thought was going to help his life, it didn't work. Have you ever gotten something you thought was going to make you happy and it didn't work? Like I've talked to younger people, and they've worked really, really hard to get this girl to date them or to get this guy to, and then they find out it's like, wow, what was I thinking? Right? All right, so now remember, our resources are our stuff, our time, and our experiences, right? Okay, so he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And see, that's why Jesus makes this stern warning in Luke chapter 12. He said that we need to be, so he said, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Because greed is something that will lie to us, convince us of something that is not true. Now, can I just get real with you? See, sometimes we think if we can get the other person in a relationship to act this way or to respond this way or to talk this way, we think it's going to bring satisfaction. My friend, that's greed. That's still greed. It's not monetary value, but it's still greed because we're still trying to get something to move our own way. So greed has its roots in hurt and fear. We're trying to prevent ourselves from getting hurt, so we kind of pat ourselves, or we're trying to keep from being afraid, so it's our safety net, right? Now, the problem is that somewhere along the line, greed has told somebody that they're less, so they try to be more. So here's how this works. So greed tells our hearts, if you get this relationship, or if you can get this guy, get this girl, if you can get this stuff, or you can get this job, if you can get this promotion, or if you can get this car, get this house, or if you just had this computer, or you got this TV, it tells us if you get this, you'll be satisfied. Everybody say satisfied. Even in your marriage, if you could just get to where you don't argue all the time, you'll be happy. That's funny. See, greed makes promises that are not realistic, okay? If you get this certain lifestyle, or man, our problems would be over if we could just have this kind of house, or if we could just get this promotion, we would never have problems. See, that's a lie. It doesn't work that way because ultimately, greed is a fleshly appetite. Listen close. Greed is a fleshly appetite. Fleshly appetites don't last. Watch this. Today after church, you can go to El Tap. You can order 2 dinners. 2. You get the super fancy burrito, right? The thing that looks like it's got a possum wrapped up in a burrito, you know. It's huge. You can eat 2 of them. You can get so full that they have to carry you out in a cart. And you can say, you know what, that satisfies me, I'm good. But here's what I know, guaranteed, tomorrow you'll be hungry again. Because that's how fleshly appetites work. You come in after a really hot day, you can slug down 4 bottles of Gatorade. You go back out and work tomorrow, you'll be thirsty again because it's a fleshly appetite. See, greed is a fleshly appetite. So it promises it's going to bring satisfaction, but it doesn't bring satisfaction. It only brings it for the moment. Are you still with me? Right? So that's why Jesus said, be on your guard, because if you give your heart to greed, you will always be unsatisfied. It doesn't keep its promises, right? And so now here's what I know. Because of the personal cost of greed, the carnage piles up. Listen, we develop a life where we've gone after stuff and it hasn't produced the results that we want. And we get in arguments and we get in fights and we get discontent and we say things, we do things, and the pile gets huge. Is anybody listening to me? Because we're not satisfied, we still keep pursuing this, not realizing we've left all this carnage behind. Here's what I know. I know that I will probably never convince you have a greed problem. So I give. You're off the hook, right? I'm not going to convince you. But I want you to have a conversation with yourself. Anybody ever talk to yourself? Come on, you know. Yeah, you know. Now, not the crazy kind. Like, hey, what do you think? Well, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, not those kind. But the kind where you just like, oh, come on, man, get it together. This is how it works for me. Something will happen, I'll go, seriously, Dave? Are you kidding me? Why did you do that? I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid. But see, I want you to have a conversation with yourself. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the decision that you've made. I want you to look at the places that you were willing to walk that you didn't think that you would ever walk. I want you to look at the sacrifices that you made that you honestly didn't have to make. I want to ask you to look at the cost that you've paid over the course of your life. And ask yourself, what did you gain? Back in this conversation, Luke chapter 18, this rich young ruler is talking to Jesus. And Jesus, after he heard what this guy said, he goes, listen, verse 22, you still lack one thing. After all of that work, after all of that trying, after all of that change, after all that pursuit, and after all that manipulation, it's still not enough. Isn't that how greed works? You're still not happy. You're still not satisfied. It's still not enough. I don't know why, but when I read this, I just think of the movie City Slickers. Anybody remember City Slickers? Remember the old cowboy? You don't have a cigarette, but it's like one thing, boy, you know. So he tells this guy, you still lack one thing. What's the one thing? What's the one thing? He says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to sell everything you have and give it to the poor. Then you'll have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me. And the guy, he couldn't take it because he wasn't willing to let go. Because listen, his stuff became his identity. The culture that we live in today, this is what makes this a big deal. The culture we live in today, we are identified by what we have. We're identified by where we live. We're identified by being in the right relationship. We're identified by the schedule that we keep or being involved in all this kind of stuff. I watch these moms that are just running themselves ragged, running from this to this to this to this, thinking their kids have to be involved in all of these things. I mean, how about this really cool idea of stay home? Is that crazy? People ask me, they said, well, you know, when you were a kid, did they have fitness programs? Yeah, it was called Go Outside and Play. They would lock the door. My parents locked their children outside. And when we're hungry, get this, there was a hole in the screen door. Hand out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Here you go. I'm thirsty. Garden hose right over there. I gotta pee. Anyway, I'll move on. The cure for the greedy heart is generosity. This is why I really want to talk to you for just a second. The cure for the greedy heart. So in relationships, the cure for your struggles is to become a giver in the relationship. Become a giver in the family. Can I say this to those that are like between 15 and 25? Become a giver. Instead of a taker, man, that'll change the whole world. Matter of fact, if you become a giver, your parents are going to go, are you okay? You feeling okay? The cure for the greedy heart is generosity. Start giving back. When we talk about generosity, I'm not talking about, giving $1 to the guy that's standing on the street corner. See, because generosity, the word for generosity is actually sacrifice. Generosity is supposed to change you. It's supposed to adjust your living. Watch this. In a relationship, when somebody is a giver in a relationship, they rearrange how they live. They rearrange their life. Instead of all those girls, he only has one girl. Instead of all those guys, she only has one guy. See what I'm saying? Generosity changes who you are because you're giving yourself to something. My friends, here's what I'm saying. You have been raised in a world that has told you to be greedy, that has told you to not to give out, and has told you you're going to be less. And I'm telling you, God says you're going to be more. But in order to be more, you've got to open up your heart and let God, and open up your heart and let people in. Are you going to get hurt? Probably. But my friend, you can't outgive God. See, the problem is sometimes we use the wrong stick to measure ourselves. We try to measure ourselves with other people or try to measure ourselves by some stupid movie or TV show. Girls are supposed to look like the magazine cover. It's a lie. Supposed to have a relationship like these people. Don't you know that they're fake? Well, look, they never fight. They just do it privately. That's the only difference. See, the cost to the giver will change the way that they live. You might not have all the time that you are used to having to yourself. You might not be able to do all the things that you used to do, because you're investing yourself in a life that really matters instead of yourself. You still with me? See, Solomon made this really simple. He said in Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9, he said, honor the Lord with the first fruits of all of your increase. Listen, here's how this works. If you always put God first, you don't have to worry about fitting him in. Put him first in your stuff. Put him first in your time. Put him first in your experiences. Because here's what we already know. If he's not first, If your family's not first, then all they get is leftovers, and then maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. I've had people say, well, I'm not a morning person. Well, you're obviously not a night person either. God says, look, if you get your priorities right, that's how you get the favor of God working in your life. So here's what that means. Start somewhere. Start. Commit yourself to something. If I were to be honest with you, the reason a lot of people struggle is because they're uncommitted. You ask them something like, well, I don't know, we'll see if I have time, if it works out, or oh, if it's the full moon, or you know, if I don't throw up in the morning, or you know, they just start. Commit yourself to something. When it comes to giving, I mean, set a percentage to begin with. Even if 1%, something you're committed to. Start spending time with God. Something you're committed to, it doesn't change. Start spending time with your family and making meaningful conversation, because what happens is we allow our schedules to edge everything else out. Listen, my friend, if you're making phone calls in the shower, you got a problem. I mean, really. We get ourselves in such a crunch that we don't have room for life. If you don't have room for life, you don't have room for God. If you don't have room for God, you probably don't even have room for the people that matter the most. See, greed doesn't just show up in your checkbook. Greed will show up on your calendar. It'll show up in the stuff that you think is mine. My way, my stuff. Listen, I'm getting ready to hurt your feelings, so just brace yourself. From our hurt history, we try to get relationships and stuff back on track. And once it starts getting back on track, we don't give up any ground. Is anybody listening to me? We still leverage the relationship. That's greed. That's taking advantage. So here's the deal. Here's how this comes out. God cannot bless a closed hand. Everybody do this. Do this. Come on. Do it tight. I mean white knuckle, hard tight. God can't bless a closed hand. So God, I want you to bless my relationship. No, you're holding your heart hostage. See, this represents your heart. God can't bless a closed hand. So what God was asking the rich young ruler to do, and what God is asking you and I to do today, he's saying, you know what? Open up. Open up your heart. Open up and let me in. Let me close again. Let me see if I can heal what's broken. Let me see if I can heal that hole. Let me see if I can get your life back on track. Now what happens is we're afraid to open up our hand because we're afraid he'll take something out. That's exactly what he was asking the rich young ruler. Open up your hand. Get this, you ready? What you don't know, that if God chooses to take something out, God has a plan to put something else back in. So the only one you're cheating is yourself. You're measuring life with the wrong measurement. Measuring with the stick. Here's Jesus committed the ultimate act of generosity when he saw our brokenness, when he saw our struggles, when he saw the things that we were going through. He said, not am I only going to be generous, I'm going to pour my love out in such a way that is undeniable. He starts when he rose from supper and he wrapped himself in a towel. He started washing his disciples' feet. He said, look, you don't lose anything when you give. I'm going to stop right here. Could you everybody bow their heads and close their eyes for just a moment, please? I just really want to be sensitive to the Spirit right now. Some of you, because of the wounds and stuff that you've experienced, some of you realize that you have been really, really defensive. You've been very guarded in your heart because you don't trust people. You don't even trust the person you're sitting by maybe. but you're so guarded that you get defensive, and everything becomes a battle. Everything becomes a challenge. Everything is an issue. So while every head is bowed, everybody's eyes are closed, say, you know what? I don't like being this person. I don't like being angry. I don't like being frustrated. I don't like being so cautious that I can't even relax. If I'm talking to you this morning, all I want you to do is just raise your hand up and put it right back down real quick. Come on. Thank you. Thank you. All over this room. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's starting to affect your relationships. It's affecting your heart. But you're so defensive all the time. Come on now. I know I'm talking about the right stuff. Thank you. Everything you take is an offense. Everything's like you're being challenged. Like, what do you mean by that? What's going on? Where have you been? What are you talking about? Come on now. Come on, show me your hand. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're getting mad all the time. You're overreacting all the time. You're frustrated all the time. If you haven't yet raised your hand, you know you need to just quit. Come on. Come on. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My friend, you know that's not how God made you to be. You know that's not what God wants for your life. Could y'all stand this morning, please? Listen. What if? What if there's something in your life that God wants to remove? What if it's something that you don't want to lose? Here's what I'm thinking. When God asked the rich young ruler to sell everything, what if what God's taking out of your hand is pride? What if he's taking out offense? What if he's taking out the hurt and brokenness from our previous relationship? What if what he takes out is grief that you can't get past? And he puts back in, instead of pride, humility. Instead of pain, he puts in joy. Are you listening to me? What if he puts something back in that you really, really need? What if it's going to put you over the top? What if it's going to change your life? So you don't surrender anything to God that God does not give you back something way better. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. He's not going to withhold any good gift from you. But see, it's the stuff that we clench our fist around and we refuse to let go. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be hurt. He's not going to hurt you. Does that guarantee nothing bad will ever happen? No. My friend, don't be greedy. Watch what God can do. So here's what we're going to do. Some of us today, we just need to just basically, here it is. Some of you are living in broken relationships. Surrender that relationship to God. Some of you, you're trying to get over a habit that you can't shake. Time to just surrender to God. This makes sense, guys? Some of you have been angry and there's some stuff that you can't let go. You're waiting on something to happen. It may never happen, but you open your hand and say, here, God, I need you to heal this broken place in me. And God, what he'll do is he will add the cross to that problem. He's measured by the right stick. Okay? You guys ready? Let's pray.